Retro Quickies, Action 52, Games 46 through 52.
Oh my god, can you believe it, folks? We're finally there! We finally made it to the end of this! Nothing can express my elation at the prospect of being done so that I can move on to other things, like maybe covering every single Mario Party minigame, or something less heinous than this. Well, anyway, here's the last 7 games in Action 52.
Dead End!
I'd say the title was trying to be clever, but I'm pretty sure Dead End actually doesn't mean anything, so it's losing points right away. It's basically the same as all the other space shooters on the cartridge, only instead of a generic space setting, you're playing as an ant shooting at other ants, spiders, and other multicolored insects of indeterminate origin. Of course, the issue here is that, due to the slow movement and firing rate of your avatar, it's impossible to keep up with the spawn rate of the enemies, who will very easily make it all the way down to the bottom of the playfield, where you have no recourse or ability to fight back. Sometimes they do make their way back up, but more often than not, they just stay there, forever, waiting. It's only a matter of time.
Hambo's Adventures.
Yet another single-screen platformer, though unlike every other one on the cart, where you progress by defeating a certain number of enemies, this one has you hopping over obstacles to reach the end goal. It might actually be at least a little bit more interesting, but due to the horrible jumping controls, wonky hitboxes, and random enemy movement and placement, even jumping over the most basic enemy and making it to the exit of a level is shockingly difficult. Well, okay, it's Action 52, so it's not that shocking.
Time Warp Tickers.
I don't even know what I'm looking at here. You're a pair of fingers locked in what looks like a low-rent clone of Wacky Land from Looney Tunes, flicking at worms, rectangles, and eyeballs to try and reach the end of the stage. Unlike other platformers like this on the cart, you only have 1 hit point, so getting killed is very easy, especially since enemies love to fly at you from both sides of the screen, and having to turn around to attack with that dinky little flick of yours is a lot harder than it seems.
Jigsaw.
Oh boy, another one of my favorite games from the collection, for the exact same reason as Alfred and the Fettuccine. It doesn't actually start up! For any other cartridge, I'd probably be disappointed by this, but do you really think that a simple jigsaw puzzle game, which I assume is what this would be any more interesting than anything else in this collection? Probably not, and even when it's well programmed, if I wanted to put together a jigsaw puzzle, I'd go to my local library and pick up a jigsaw puzzle. I wouldn't boot up a game to play this. Or I'd go and play Banjo-Kazooie, that game had plenty of jigsaws.
Ninja Assault.
Another semi-pseudo sorta beat-em-up like slashers, except it's a flat 2D plane, and you can't depend on the almighty turbo button this time around. There's a bit more range of movement with this one, in that the game doesn't force you to stop in your tracks when you engage in fights with the enemy, but it's still a one-on-one affair where you hammer on the attack button and hopefully hit the enemy before they hit you. Combat in this one is a lot slower, since you and the enemy are constantly flying backwards after getting hit, rather than mashing together like a pair of action figures being wielded by a sugar-high 8-year-old. But I will say I rather like the crunchy sound effect whenever one of you gets hit. It's not exactly satisfying, but hey, it's something. And it gives me a chance to pad out this section of the video. Give me your ad dollars.
Robbie and the Robots.
Oh man, what an underwhelming penultimate experience. It's basically another clone of Ooze, but with even less level design. You can just run through the first level without stopping at all, and even when pits are introduced in the second stage, so long as you're quick to jump over them, like with the turbo button jump glitch, the difficulty doesn't really get too much higher. Hell, it is one of the only platformers where you move at a decent pace too. So it's a game with a nugget of something fun in there, but of course, it was thrown together at the same time as everything else on the cartridge, so it's mostly just boring because of that. Functional, but I'm not going to applaud a game for just reaching the bare minimum.
Cheetah Man.
And here we are, folks, the final game, 52 out of 52, the denouement to this entire horrific experience, and also the one that Active Enterprises was obviously banking on to make them some real big cash. They wanted this to be their big toyetic breakthrough, their TMNT, their Street Sharks, their My Little Pony, basically. Unfortunately for them, it would be none of those things. Hell, it wouldn't even be a Bucky O'Hare, or a Skeleton Warriors, or a Mummies Alive, or a Biker Mice from Mars, or a Mighty Ducks the Animated Series. Man, there were a lot of of these sorts of series, weren't there? Anyway, this is one of the only games that gets any sort of cutscene or story explanation, with a guy called the Action Game Master getting isekai'd into his Action 52 cartridge, where the Cheetah Men for some reason agree to fight for him and defend him. I mean, it's nice to know that there is an actual story here as opposed to every other game, which barely gets anything. Even the manual basically just has a one-sentence blurb about what's actually happening in each game, but the whole thing about the Action Game Master doesn't come back at all at any point in the game. But with all this extra work and ambition behind it, you'd expect this to be the top of the bottom, the cream of the crap, right? At the very least, it has to be more interesting than the other games that came before it, yeah? No, it's just as bad. Its big gimmick is that every 2 levels, you switch to a different Cheetah Man with a different weapon. And while it does sound like that could be interesting, 2 of them are functionally the same, and the last one, who uses a crossbow, ironically is harder to use because hitting anything with his tiny shot is really finicky. The first stage is also isometric in nature, but the rest of the game plays out as a basic side-scroller, and this is also probably the game that has the most egregious reuse of assets in the whole package. While I can't tell if the background or stage elements are reused, as it could just be tiling used from other stages for all I know, most of the enemies and obstacles that you run into are sprites from other games, like the flying pies and female enemy model from Slasher. It's kind of weird considering, again, this was supposed to be their big breakthrough title, so much so that a sequel was in development before the company went belly up, and the single run of produced cartridges for said unreleased sequel is now one of the rarest, most expensive cartridges on the console. The game also has a boss fight, but at this point in recording it, I just couldn't push through to actually reach it, and it's just as jank as anything else in the cartridge. And there you have it, every single game in Action 52, each one covered individually. This was a very bad idea, mostly because there's only so much that I can talk about with games as simple as this. I do like the idea of covering games within games like this, but damn, I'll need something more interesting for this format in the future. For now though, I think I know exactly how to sum up the entire experience. You ready? Because here it comes. It's bad.